The robin on your fence is, to most people in Britain, the friendliest bird there is. It hops close while you're gardening. It watches you with that big dark eye. It sits an arm's length away, on the spade handle, on the fork, on the edge of the wheelbarrow, as if it simply enjoys your company. And it is, at the very same time, one of the most violent and ruthless birds in your entire garden. A bird that will fight other robins to exhaustion, drive rivals off without mercy, and, far more often than almost anyone realizes, actually kill its own kind over a patch of ground no bigger than your lawn. That gentle little character on the spade handle and the merciless warrior in the hedge are not two different birds. They are the same robin. And once you understand why it's so friendly with you and so brutal with its own, you'll never look at that red breast the same way again. By the end of this, you'll know what the robin's famous friendliness actually is and where it came from. Why the red breast is far more dangerous than it looks. Why a robin will sometimes hurl itself again and again at your window. And the genuinely startling number of robins that die, not from cats, not from cold, but from other robins. If you appreciate this kind of thing, gently tap that like button. It really does help these films reach more people. Right, let's find out. Let's start with the friendliness itself, because it isn't quite what it seems, and it isn't even the same the world over. When a robin hops up close while you're digging, it feels personal. It feels like the bird trusts you, has chosen your company. And it's a lovely feeling, but the truth underneath it is a good deal more calculating. Robins evolved long before gardens existed to follow large animals that turn over the soil. Wild boar rooting through the forest floor, deer churning up the ground, badgers digging. All of them expose worms, grubs, and insects as they go, and the robin learned to shadow them, waiting just behind, snapping up every morsel the big animal kicked loose. It was one of the most reliable free meals in the wood. You, with your spade, are simply the modern version of that boar. When the robin sits beside you, head tilted, watching you dig, it isn't keeping you company, it's working. You are a large, useful, soil-disturbing animal, and it is waiting for you to turn up its dinner. The friendliness is really opportunism. Brilliant, ancient opportunism. It's why the robin earned its old nickname, the gardener's friend, and why, of all our birds, it's the one most likely to take a mealworm straight from an open palm. That trust isn't sentiment. It's a wild animal that has done the sums and decided you're worth the risk. But here's the part that surprises people. This boldness is almost a British speciality. Go to much of continental Europe, and the robin is a shy, skulking bird of the deep woods that vanishes the moment you appear. And the reason is a dark one. For centuries, across much of the continent, robins were widely trapped and eaten. Small birds caught in enormous numbers, and a robin that kept its distance from people was a robin that lived to breed. In Britain, by and large, we didn't do that. Our robins were left alone, even welcomed indoors at the window, and so the bold ones thrived, and the fear was never drummed into them. The tameness you love in your garden, robin is, in part, an accident of history, centuries of us not hunting it, while its cousins across the channel learned the opposite lesson the hard way. So the robin has every reason to be relaxed around you, but turn that same robin towards another robin, and everything changes. Because the thing on its chest isn't decoration, it's a weapon. The red breast is one of the most studied signals in all of British wildlife, thanks largely to one man, the naturalist David Lack, who spent years watching robins and worked out what that flash of red really does. And what he found was that to a robin, the red breast is not a pretty color. It is a trigger, a challenge, a flag of war. Lack was also one of the first people ever to study a wild bird as a set of named individuals. He caught his robins and fitted them with tiny colored rings so he could tell one from another and follow the very same bird day after day as it defended the same few yards of hedge. And once you can recognize individuals, you can start to ask what actually sets them off. Lack did something wonderfully simple. He placed a stuffed, complete young robin, brown, speckled, with no red breast at all, inside a robin's territory, and the resident bird essentially ignored it. Then he put out almost nothing, just a small bundle of red feathers. No head, no body, no shape of a bird at all, a mere tuft of red. And the resident robin attacked it, furiously, again and again. The lesson is almost hard to believe. The robin isn't really seeing another bird at all. It's seeing red in its territory. And red means rival, and rival means fight. That warm little breast you find so charming is, to every other robin in the neighborhood, a provocation it is almost physically incapable of ignoring. And that is where the promise from the start comes in. The robin at your window. If you've ever had a robin repeatedly flinging itself at a window pane, a car wing mirror, or a shiny hubcap, now you know why. It has caught sight of its own reflection, a robin with a red breast, where no robin should be. And it cannot understand that the rival is itself, so it attacks, sometimes for hours, sometimes on and off for days, occasionally until it is exhausted or hurt, waging war on a bird that doesn't exist. It's the same red trigger, misfiring against a pane of glass. There's one more twist, and it's a clever one. Young robins, fresh from the nest, don't have the red breast at all. They are speckled and brown all over, and that is almost certainly no accident. A juvenile with no red sets off none of the adult's alarms, so it can feed in and around grown robins' territories without being driven out or killed, right up until, in its first autumn, it molts into the famous red. And the moment it does, the tolerance ends. It is now a rival, a flag of war like any other, and it must go and win a patch of its own. If you've ever watched two robins go at it and wondered why they seem so completely, blindly enraged, drop a comment below. Because what you were really watching was two red flags that physically could not back down. So what actually happens when two robins clash? There's a ritual to it, and it escalates in stages. It usually begins with song. And here's something most people never realize. The robin is one of the very few British birds that sings almost all the year round. That autumn and winter song, thinner and more wistful than the bright rush of spring, isn't romance. It's a territorial announcement, a keep-out sign held up in sound. The robin will even sing it in the dark. In a town, under a streetlight bright enough to convince it that dawn never quite ends, a robin will sing in the small hours. And more than one has been mistaken for a nightingale by someone lying awake at 2 a.m. And that song carries more than just keep out. A robin is far angrier at a stranger's song than at the familiar song of the robin next door. A known neighbor has already fought out where the boundary lies. A new voice has not, and might be after everything. So a robin learns its neighbors by their songs, individually, and saves its real fury for the unfamiliar, the newcomer, with everything still to take. When two robins face off across a boundary, they sing straight at each other, not sweetly, but as a contest, each trying to outsing and outlast the other. Then it moves to posture. Each bird tries to get higher than its rival, a higher branch, a higher perch, and from up there it shows the red breast off as fully and aggressively as it can, puffing it out, swaying, turning it to catch the light. Height plus red equals dominance. A great many disputes end right there, with the loser slipping quietly away. But when neither will back down, it turns physical. The birds fly at each other, grappling, striking with beak and claw, sometimes locking together and tumbling to the ground. And these are not the harmless squabbles they can look like from the kitchen window. A robin will pin another down and strike at its head and its eyes. A fight can go on until one bird is exhausted, blinded, injured, or dead. And that isn't a rare tragedy. It's a genuine, measurable cause of death. Because here's the number that stops people. In some places, as much as 10% of all adult robin deaths are caused by other robins. Look closer, and it's starker still. An estimated 1 in 10 adult male robins that die are killed by their own kind, along with a smaller share of the females. Not predators, not weather, not starvation. Other robins. And it sits on top of a life that is already desperately short. The average robin lives only about 13 months. Most never see a second birthday. That first winter alone takes a huge share of them. So a robin isn't fighting from a position of comfort. It is a small bird with almost no margin, gambling everything on holding its ground. Think about that the next time you see two robins chasing each other across the garden in a blur. That isn't play. For a small but very real fraction of them, that is how the story ends. Now, before we get to why a bird would ever be this ruthless, I want to mention something quickly. This, the hidden violence behind a bird everyone thinks they know, is exactly the kind of thing that changes how you watch your own garden. So I've been putting together a free guide to the garden birds of Britain and Northern Ireland, what they're really doing, and how to read the behavior right in front of you. It's completely free, and it's the perfect companion to these films. So why? Why would a bird evolve to be this violent with its own kind? The answer is territory, and for a robin, territory is not a luxury. It's survival itself. A robin's patch, often only about half a hectare, a garden or two's worth of ground, is its entire food supply. In the lean months especially, that ground is the difference between reaching spring and not. A rival robin isn't an annoyance. It's a direct threat to the one resource the bird's life depends on. And here's what makes the robin unusual. Most small birds only defend a territory in the breeding season, then ease off for the winter. The robin does not. Robins are one of the very few birds that hold territory in winter too, and not just the males. In autumn, the females stop being tolerated, break away and set up their own separate winter territories, singing and fighting to defend them exactly as the males do. Which means autumn, when this year's young are all trying to carve out ground of their own, is one long, bitter turf war across every hedge and garden in the country, going on quietly while most of us assume the birds have turned peaceful for the year. You can even hear the turn of it. For a few weeks in high summer, as the robins molt and grow briefly vulnerable, they fall quiet and skulk in the undergrowth, and the garden seems suddenly empty of them. Then, one still morning in early autumn, that first thin, wistful song starts up again. And what sounds to us like the loneliest sound in the garden is really the opening shot of the winter's war. So the pressure never really lets up. There is almost no time of year when a robin can afford to be generous, and that is why it commits so totally. A bird that hesitates, that shares, that tolerates an intruder, is a bird that may not eat enough to survive the winter. Ruthlessness, for a robin, isn't cruelty. It's arithmetic. There is exactly one truce a robin ever calls, and even that begins as a fight. In late winter, when a female crosses into a male's territory to pair, he doesn't welcome her. He attacks her, because at first she is simply another intruder, but she doesn't leave. She stays and endures it, and slowly the aggression cools into something else. He starts to bring her food, beak to beak, courtship feeding, the very same soil-turned-up gift he'd happily take from your spade, now offered instead of stolen. For a few short months, the two of them raise a brood together, and then, when the young have gone, the truce dissolves as fast as it formed, and the pair go back to being what robins nearly always are to one another, rivals, which is a strange thing to sit with when you remember what we've made of this bird. The robin was voted Britain's national bird. It's on our Christmas cards, our biscuit tins, our stamps, the very picture of warmth and gentleness and goodwill. And all the while, the real bird behind the image is a solitary territorial fighter that sings to threaten, displays to intimidate, and will kill a rival over a few square meters of soil. We fell in love with the friendliest face in the garden and never noticed it belonged to one of its most dangerous residents. Which brings us all the way back to you and to why that same merciless bird is so astonishingly gentle in your company, because you break the one rule that triggers all of it. You are enormous. You don't compete for worms in any way it recognizes. And above all, you have no red breast. You are not a rival. You set off none of the alarms that another robin does. So the robin can switch the warrior off completely and simply treat you as what you are to it. A huge, harmless, useful animal that turns over the soil and, if you're lucky, might be worth following about. So the friendliness and the ruthlessness were never a contradiction. They're the same bird, running the same ancient program, total commitment to the patch of ground it needs to live, and a clever, opportunistic eye for anything or anyone that might make survival a little easier. You just happen to fall on the safe side of that line. The robin on your fence really is one of the most ruthless birds in Britain. You're simply lucky enough that it has decided you're not worth fighting. If you got something out of this one, do leave a like before you go. It genuinely helps these birds reach more people who'd love them. And if you'd like to meet another garden favorite that's nothing like as innocent as it looks, the magpie that has quietly learned your face and already decided whether to trust you, I made a whole film about it, and you can watch it right here. Until the next one, keep an eye on that fence. It's almost certainly keeping an eye on you.